Carla and Lou here from Brrraains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, and it's track by track time as we are, oh baby, are we going to a difficult one to talk about. Now, obviously, normally track by tracks, a lot of them, most of them, 10 tracks, 8 tracks, 12 tracks, we summarise a thought on a track so we can move on quickly and try and get the videos in with between 10 and 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
Then you reach an album like this, which only has a handful of tracks, but each one is a gargantuan listen.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay, we can't get away with writing 2 lines here. Got to write a bit more about it so we do it justice. And ultimately, you're never really going to be able to do it justice, because an album like this, it's more about how it makes you feel and how it affects each individual person than anything else. You've seen the title. It is, of course, Monoliths and Dimensions by Sunn.
Yeah.
This band, absolutely. The 6th studio album by the avant-garde drone doom band. Wondering how to pronounce it? Are you one of those people? It's pronounced Sunn. It's that. Simple as that.
That's a dig at me there. And I actually did.
It's not a dig. No, it's not a dig. It's not a dig because, of course, before I read how it was pronounced, whenever, I looked at that and went, Sunn O? Close brackets 3 times?
I even did it on my title.
You know?
Such an idiot.
So the album was created and recorded over a period of 2 years and features the collaborations of composer Evian Kang, Australian guitar player Orion Ambarchi, Hungarian vocalist Attila Cesar, Dylan Carson from the drone band Earth, and trombonist Julian Priester and Stuart Dempster. Also present is an upright bass trio, French and English horns, harp and flute duo, piano, brass, reed and a string ensembler, and a Viennese women's choir led by composer and vocalist Jessica Kenny.
Not much then. Easy.
The final song, titled Alice, is a dedication to the jazz harpist, combined the two there, Alice Coltrane, who died in 2007. So hopefully there, with that brief rundown of what's involved, will give you an idea of what to expect. Now, I have to ask you straight up, not do you like Sunn, because I don't think that's a difficult question to answer, but drone, avant-garde drone, that style, is that a side of music you enjoy?
There was elements of this I liked, but I think it was just overall too long for me. Like there's some parts it's just like it is just drone, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't listen to much of it. And there's bits in this that I still remember now, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But if it was more like a horror soundtrack,
okay,
or like a gaming soundtrack for me,
okay.
And it did make me laugh that I was listening to this, and then on The Office, the American Office, Gabe had his unsettling music playing, his horror films playing, and I was like, oh, it's like listening to Sunn again. But no, like the amount of work goes into it is incredible. But I don't know if I wouldn't put this on again.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, the one track that the top track I picked, I probably would, just because there's a bit of difference, a bit of change in structure for me.
Okay.
But yeah, it's quite difficult. But I mean, there might be other albums to like ease me in a bit more gentle than this one.
Well, there's you know, a wide array in drone as well, like of ideas and stuff like that. I asked the question because I am a big fan of drone music. From the GBHBL website, you know, I'm actually quite alone in that sort of things. I find drone could be quite challenging, quite interesting, and they're quite imaginative. You know, obviously I'm completely aware of who Sunn were previously, but I wouldn't necessarily say I was a fan, only because I haven't always given it a lot of time.
Yeah.
And again, like I think this is probably the first full album I've listened of theirs, but I can't verify that because I know I listened to Sunn a lot when I was younger.
Oh, really?
But that was kind of pre when my taste was as varied as it is now, so I can't really say if I enjoyed it or not.
Yeah.
Whereas now I loved it. So.
I mean, I don't know how it would come across how you see them live.
How
that would work. See what I mean?
Well, what do you mean how it would work?
I don't know. I suppose
they play the music on stage.
It might be more interesting to watch it being played, to be honest.
Maybe.
Interesting, not the wrong word. Might be more able to kind of get on board with it, watching it being played live for me.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, Monoliths and Dimensions. We begin with Agatha. This is over 70 minutes long. And how do you describe such a wandering epic? I'm going to try. A track that is so experimental it is kind of maddening. From the moody, stomach-turning drone that has just the right number of subtle shifts to not bore, to the subtle build of atmosphere that adds even more layering, the super eerie vibe and general uncomfortable scenario it crafts. Is it genius or madness? The line is being walked expertly by this band. When the vocals arrive, it gets even darker as the low grumble makes it feel like you're hearing a sermon, but not one to comfort. The horror. It's not an easy thing to embrace. You don't listen to this sort of music in the same way you do other music. You exist in it. It is thick and heavy around you. You float around the nothing, untethered. Fear doesn't exist because you don't feel anything. Is this death? Is this hell? Or is it something else completely? So in summation, I love it. Follow that.
Yeah, it does make you feel very uncomfortable, like I'm in a satanic ritual. Like the creaking.
Yep.
Makes you feel very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And Look Up did the vocals. He does quite a bit for quite a few other like drone style bands.
Dylan Carlson from Earth or Attila Cesar. There's
that one.
Yeah.
Because I was looking
The
at
Hungarian
his name.
vocalist. Yeah.
Yeah, like he does a lot, and obviously his voice is like, this is really creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite an intro. It's like it's gonna be it was an experience for sure. Like because there's no there's even less structure than what I'm used to.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
And I think again unsettling. There's no like what can I hold on to? Yeah, so it first felt like more like a horror soundtrack than a track for me.
We knew this was going to be one of the most challenging ones to talk about because for me, and we haven't done many of these, this is an album where you kind of talk about how it makes you feel more than anything else. I can sit here and tell you about the buzzers and the drones and the sound of flies and the noises it makes and the jazzy parts and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I just think it would come across like nonsense.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It is. You know, it's more about how it's going to make you feel and what you take from that. For you, it felt like a horror soundtrack. I get that. I use the term horror as well.
Yeah. But I feel like this kind of music as well, like it's a real passion of love because it's not commercial in any sense.
No, God, no, absolutely,
Any
yeah,
sense of the
yeah.
word.
It still has an incredible fan base.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Sunn last time they played in this country it was the Forum.
Oh.
So they're doing in London. I'm referring to there,
Yeah.
of course.
But yes, I think I do always
Or the
appreciate the
Roundhouse.
craft.
For some reason, the Roundhouse rings a bell as well,
Oh,
which would
I
be
should look into that.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like the effort and the work that goes into craft, like 2 years, and the list of people you said, and the levels, the layers of it is amazing. And yeah, like not to go down the line of we'll just put some vocals and some like proper guitars in it, and jump like with everyone else. It's like no, this is what we want to do. This is what we're sticking to. So yeah, fair play.
Next track, Big Church.
Yeah.
And in brackets, I ain't reading it, but I will tell you what it is. This word that follows the part in the brackets of the Big Church, it's 44 letters long and is one example of a long word in the Hungarian language. It means something like, for your plural continued behaviour as if you could not be desecrated.
I thought it was like let on their.
It's an example of one of the longest words in the world. That's what it is.
Wow.
However, it should also be noted that it's a word that's been morphed, since the Hungarian language is an agglutinative language. What's that? Agglutinative language.
Agglutinative?
Language. So from what I gather, what that
The
means
way-
is it's how it's expressed more than anything else.
Like the sounds a tongue makes, maybe.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But either way, that's the second. That's the part in brackets.
Yeah, I was going to type it out, but I thought.
I just copied and pasted it. Fucking type it out. Copied and pasted
I
it.
don't know.
Big Church. The
Yeah.
lightness of the celestial choir makes for a momentary nice change of pace. But the drumming engine starts up and stomachs will drop. The filthy sound of reverb and the pace interrupted by the choir and varying instruments to balance the weight. Aside from that, what makes this droning noise a bit of a masterpiece is how the tones curl and change methodically. This might be what you hear as you transcend towards heaven if it exists.
See, I was like, oh, a choir. Why do I thought this is going to turn horrific? Oh, yes, it goes down. Because it starts on a choir. I'm like, oh, sweet, this is going to be nice and light. No, straight back into it. The choir and the gloom is great. It builds an intensity, and I do appreciate that. And I do feel having different bits of choir, there's a bit more structure to it, albeit still sounding weird.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, that's the question. Is constantly you don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like that's not normal for me in terms of music, but I did enjoy it.
You don't like being challenged. No, I'm joking. Hunting and gathering in brackets Sidonia. Forget the light of that the previous track shone. It's time for hellish horrors again. Hilariously, Sunn varied the tempo here and ramped the drone speed up just a tiny touch. The vocals are a bit more prominent, but just as wicked sounding, and the brass adds an interesting exclamation point. Though this is a track that gets grander as it goes on and starts to resembling something quite cinematic with the trombones. It's the darkest track on the album, and it's quite unforgiving.
I really like this one.
Okay.
I like the trumpets. They give it a regal feel. I feel like I was being marched to my beheading. Like kind of like a religious crimes and then marched to my death.
Okay.
Really cool. And then, like you said, it has a bit more pace to it, which I liked. Because again, sometimes I wanted the drones to get a bit quicker. I'm like, go a bit quicker.
Okay.
Just speed up a little bit. And it also reminded me of another band that do elements of trumpets and stuff. Imperial Triumphant.
Oh, yeah.
And I've listened to a bit of them and I didn't mind some of their stuff. And that's got kind of like really horrible sounding trumpets. There's no nice... It's horrendous sounding. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I know the band well. In fact, there's an interview. Go check it out on the YouTube channel with that band. Last but not least, Alice. 16 plus minutes, so you know we're in for a wild ride here. The tone of the album certainly doesn't shift here, but we do begin with some haunting atmosphere before a more melodramatic and eclectic piece of instrumentation rings out. It makes me laugh, the fact that writing eclectic here, as if the whole album isn't that.
Yeah.
This repeats before cinematic horror sends waves through the brain and the track begins to slowly but surely develop into something richer and deeper. This is a track that requires an ample amount of patience, but continues to be an endless source of fascination. I think it could almost lull you to sleep, such as the pretty tones and cinematic value that it brings. That it is far less dark than what we've experienced so far makes it stand out. It grows and grows in stature, and this ends up being one of the more emotionally captivating tracks on the album. I love the starry lightness that comes in the latter few minutes. I'm a big fan of this one.
It feels like, as this was a tribute track, maybe that's that they reflected that in the tribute track.
Of course, absolutely. That's why it's more emotive.
Yeah, I wanted one because obviously if someone could dedicated that hunting and gathering to me or big church, I'd be like, cheers, guys.
Depends what kind of person you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was a drone person, I'm trapped in this horror movie now. It did feel like I was. It does feel like a horror film soundtrack. Like really, I thought of your game Resident Evil. Your game.
My game. Yeah.
When you play Resident Evil 4,
Okay.
that look of like the religious, the Spanish people,
Right.
the Spanish theme and the dark.
Can you tell she doesn't play games? Yeah.
It was Resident Evil 4.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Kind of made me think of that. I do like the trumpets and the harps though. I do. If with that in it, I do prefer more, even if it sounds dreary. Not dreary. That's not right.
No, dreary is a decent enough word because there is a dreariness to it.
Downbeat and I like the fact they kind of ended on a slightly different kind of track, and the fact it is obviously a tribute to someone, it does make it stand out on its own almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 4 tracks long, so again we run into this problem. Top 3 tracks. Well, that's 3 out of 4 of them, so it's absurd. So we're just going to do one. However, I'm going to cheat.
Yeah.
I'm going to say you listen to the whole thing. I don't pick one out. I don't pick one out here. I don't see what the point of picking one out.
I picked one out. I picked Hunting and Gathering Sidonia.
Well, I'm saying all of them from beginning to end. For me, it's a 10 out of 10 album. I absolutely adored it, loved it, had a thoroughly good time with it. Challenged, interested, intrigued, excited, turned on.
I would give. Sorry, you got clipboard. I would, if I'd take some more drone recommendations.
Okay, if I had to choose one, then I'll go with Agatha.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, there's your one. Personally, I'd love to know what you think of this album. You know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?